Hello, our favorite humans. Welcome to Bronx Tales with your host, Bronxy B, and me. I'm Logan. Thank you for being here. I first want to start off and let you know that I've had several requests for some of the things that I use in my videos, such as my light up microphone when I go live. I just want to let you know that the few things I use, like my ring light, these little lapel microphones, and the light up microphone I use when I go live, are now linked in the description, in my description box. If you're interested, go ahead and click on the link, and there you go. It has also been brought to my attention that there was a video made by one of our favorite creators, but the information in the video was that Officer Tesdall was driving around in his car by himself. And I previously did a live and showing that Officer Tisdall was not driving around by himself. Molly did describe the vehicle that she saw as the undercover officer vehicle and one person with blondish, reddish, spiky hair driving the vehicle, which we all know is Tisdall. But the reason she only saw one person driving the vehicle is because Rosie was actually leaned back in his seat, which we can tell from his own body camera. So it is my opinion that Rosie was not inside the house with Kaylee on the first floor. Although no disrespect to the creator that said this, I just believe that Rosie was leaned back in his seat, and we can tell that by his own body-worn camera. Briefly go back and talk one more time about Dylan's statement and Bethany's statement versus what we know to be true and the sounds that we hear. Dylan stated a female roommate ran up the stairs with Murphy. Murphy then started barking. Murphy stayed on the third floor. The female roommate ran down the stairs to the second floor by herself and into the second floor bathroom. Now, Bethany stated on the first floor, she heard a bang, saw a flash, and then heard Murphy start barking. Murphy started barking at 4:17 and 5 seconds. It is my opinion that there is a perpetrator on the third floor, there's a perpetrator on the second floor, and there's also a perpetrator on the first floor. And the reason I believe that is because Dylan states she didn't hear the bang or obviously see the flash that Bethany saw on the first floor. And that's because it was happening at the exact same time that Dylan was hearing a female roommate scream that somebody's here and run back down the stairs. Dylan was honed in and focused on what she was hearing in the moment. Bethany was zoned in and focused on what she was hearing in the moment. Now, these two things, I believe, took place at the exact same time. Dylan hearing her female roommate go up the stairs with Murphy, scream that somebody's here, and run back down the stairs happened at the exact same time that Bethany heard a bang and saw a flash on the first floor, because in both scenarios, only after those two events happened simultaneously did Murphy then start barking. And that was told by both Dylan and Bethany. What they heard and saw happened at the same time, and then both say Murphy started barking after that. So it is my opinion that that proves there is a perpetrator on the third floor that Murphy is still barking at. There's a perpetrator on the second floor telling the female roommate, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." There's also a perpetrator on the first floor creating a loud bang and a flash that Bethany can see. And so if we apply the unknown DNAs that we have at the scene, we have an unknown male DNA on the third floor, which is referenced under Maddie's fingernails. We have unknown male DNA going from the second floor on the handrail down to the first floor. And we have unknown male DNA on the glove outside of the first floor. They are all different male DNAs, and they are all on different floors, which I think, in my opinion, also proves that there are 3 perpetrators in the house and 1 on each floor. I want to touch 1 second on the statement that this crime took place within 90 seconds by 1 perpetrator. Now, if we look at the blood droplets on the 3rd floor and also on the 2nd floor, we can see that at least 1 perpetrator was just standing there for however many seconds it takes to get that many blood droplets on the floor, on the 3rd floor. He is just standing there looking. Now, the same thing on the 2nd floor. A perpetrator is just standing there in the doorway, as we can see by the droplets on the floor. They're just standing there looking. Let's say it takes 1 second per droplet to fall. That would take each one of those seconds on both 3rd and 2nd floor. That would take off the 90-second time frame that they are just standing there. Now, there was also told to be evidence, indirect and direct evidence of a cleanup. How could all of that take place in 90 seconds by 1 perpetrator, but then also not leave any of the victim's DNA in their vehicle, in their home, or anywhere? Logical, common sense would tell you that the person arrested for this crime, the 1 perpetrator they believe, did not leave their DNA at the scene. There was no primary contact of Bryan Kohberger to the knife sheath, as we know by the amount of DNA on the knife sheath was not from a primary transfer, meaning Bryan Kohberger did not touch that knife sheath with his own hands. And there's no transfer red fluid from the victims to any of Bryan Kohberger's stuff in his apartment or his vehicle, which would be pretty much impossible. But what we do know is there are 3 unknown male DNAs left at the scene. And logical common sense would tell me that those 3 unknown DNAs is probably the perpetrator. It's not that Bryan Kohberger didn't transfer his DNA or transfer the victim's DNA onto any of his stuff. It's more likely that he's just not the perpetrator, and that the 3 unknown male DNAs that we have at the scene probably are the perpetrators. There was transfer from the perpetrators. They're just looking in the wrong direction. I first want to just talk really quick about what caused the roommates to call Hunter over, and then what caused the roommates to then dial 911 if they were just sleeping and cooped up in their room. They had to have gone upstairs and saw what had happened, or had knowledge of what had happened, in order to call Hunter over or to call 911. As we know in the 911 call, they weren't directed by Hunter to call 911. They were already on the phone with 911 when Hunter was checking the pulse of Xana. So what made the roommates call 911? And speaking of Hunter, Hunter said he went upstairs, grabbed a knife, and checked the pulse of Xana. He touched Xana enough to get red fluid on his fingers and then transfer it to the pong table when setting down the knife. So why, when the police arrive, is Hunter acting like Xana is still just unconscious, when he clearly had to get close enough to her to check for a pulse? He got her blood on his hands and then transferred it to the pong table. So Hunter knew the exact state that Xana, and more than likely Ethan, was left in. So how come when the police arrive is Hunter still acting like Xana is just unconscious, and doesn't mention at all that she's covered in her own red fluid and unalive? Because he clearly had to have seen that. Why does he let the officers go all the way upstairs without even telling them that at all? He didn't tell them what he saw at all. And then he goes into the living room and does this stance. And I think we've all seen this stance before in a previous case. And then only after this does Hunter go outside and start showing emotion in front of the officers. How come he didn't have these emotions when the officers arrived? How come he didn't tell the officers when they arrived exactly what he saw? And then in another video, we see a subject at 5:20 in the morning crossing the Linda Lane footage. We see him just briefly, but these legs and this outfit looks pretty familiar. Now, I'm not saying that Hunter did anything. I'm not saying he has any part in this crime. It's just the actions of these people are very strange, are not what I would expect the actions of friends who just found their friends unalived would be. After the crime had been committed and the doors had all been left open, which I don't know how the roommates didn't feel that, considering it made the heat in the whole house stop working properly, that the officers later then had to call the HVAC company to come fix the heat. Now, the HVAC man only stepped into the first floor and fixed the heat by only being on the first floor. However, the officers made the HVAC worker sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement of the crime scene. And I find that very odd because I've never seen that in any other case. Usually it's just a verbal agreement between two people, two professionals saying, hey, this is a crime scene. It's not solved. Please don't repeat anything that you see here. And usually that's just how it goes. But in this case, he was made to sign an NDA. And I find that extremely odd and very uncommon. Why was the HVAC man made to sign an NDA when he only saw the first floor anyways, which we were told didn't have any bits of the crime in it? So why would he have to sign an NDA unless what he saw on the first floor is not exactly what we're seeing on the first floor in the crime scene pictures? Maybe it was different when the HVAC man came in, and maybe things were different in the whole house, and that is why it was possibly demolished. As we all know, recently pictures were released from Bryan Kohberger's apartment, and I specifically remember Bill Thompson saying the words Spartan as describing Bryan Kohberger's apartment.
I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there.
And I honestly wouldn't describe it as that at all. I would more say describe it as just lacking. It was more so just lacking stuff because this was a student and TA that had just moved across the country 6 months prior. And it seemed to me he had made some large purchases on probably a small salary and was just acquiring things as he went along rather than moving everything he had across the country. I see a lot of spots of dust and papers strewn all over the closet and things that I would normally clean that didn't necessarily look super clean. We know that Bryan Kohberger is a germaphobe or has OCD, but Spartan isn't really the way I would describe this apartment. It more so just looks like a single male that just moved across the country and is more so just lacking stuff. So Spartan isn't the way I personally would describe it. As we see dust and stuff that's not clean in certain areas, it's more so just lacking anything to entertain him or really anything at all. He looks like he acquired a really expensive laptop and maybe a couch and some other things that probably would have taken up quite a bit of his small salary on top of paying rent and all the bills. Looks like he was just acquiring stuff as the time went on that he lived there. I really want you guys to think on the fact that there was possibly 3 perpetrators in the house committing this crime at the same time. I believe the 3rd floor was happening the same time as the 2nd floor, and I believe the flash and bang on the 1st floor was to lure out anybody who was on the first floor. Although it didn't work, but I believe that there was a perpetrator on the first floor, the second floor, and the third floor simultaneously. And I believe Maddie and Kaylee were unalived at the exact same time that Xana and Ethan were unalived, which puts more weight on the fact that there's 3 different unknown DNAs on each floor of the house, and that matters. That's what we have for you today. I hope everybody is enjoying their 3-day weekend. Do something nice for yourself. Be kind, but more importantly, be kind to your dog. Bye, guys.